This is Fit to Succeed in partnership with NordicFitnessEducation.com with hosts Ben Pratt. Thanks for joining us.
The pelvic floor exercises that people are traditionally taught isn't the end of the conversation. It's actually the beginning of the conversation. And what we need to do is have a re-coordination with the rest of the core, as you said, and then start integrating functional movement, training the pelvic floor for the movements of life.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fit to Succeed podcast. And today we have a great expert with us. Her name is Jenny Burrell and she is the founder of Burrell Education. Jenny, it's so wonderful to have you here today.
And it is wonderful to be here. Thank you. Thanks for asking me on.
No worries. I was just commenting before we started the recording how wonderful it is to have feminine touches in the background, like those beautiful flowers you have.
Of course. My work is, and I'm dedicated to women's business, and I bring all of me to work with me.
Yeah, that's great. It would be wonderful just to help the listeners get to know you a little bit. Perhaps we could start off just by asking something really simple, which is how did you begin your career in the health and fitness industry?
Okay, well, my original degree, my degree was in biochemistry and microbiology, and I love science. It's all great, but it's a bit of a dry. It can be a bit of a dry profession because
Really?
yeah, working in a lab, and with the white coat on, etc., for my work experience when I was a student. And that was where I was destined to go. And then when I was at university, there was a thing called a band society. And the band society, I joined the band society because I sang, like most kind of black people do, in church do, we sing.
Cool.
And I joined this band society. So in the last year, guess what? We won a competition to be on a record, and this record was called Planet London.
Oh, wow.
And so I went home and said to my family, that I was going to be a biochemist and I was going to do that and wear my white coat all day. Yeah, I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'm going to be a singer. And I got a job to go on a world tour. You weren't expecting me, were you?
I wasn't expecting any of it.
You probably didn't know this about me. So I got a job to go on a world tour, and obviously I loved it. I was doing backup singing for another group and went to Japan, and that was it. And then I made my own groups. Anyway, and when I'd go out on these tours, I'd then drink and eat like pizza at 3:00 in the morning. And so I'd have all my stage clothes and I'd go out slim and come back, as I always used to say, fat as butter, and then have to hit the gym to lose the weight to get into my stage clothes for the next job.
Yeah, I see where the connection's coming now. I was wondering.
I think, where are we going? So basically, that was the only thing that I also did. I used to sing and go to the gym. And then one day the teacher didn't come, and I was like, flipping heck, I've come all the way to the gym. Where's the teacher? So I said, right, I've got the whistle, got the timer. Where's those cards? It was a circuit class, and I put them all down. And I thought, it's kind of like showbiz. I'm on stage. And unfortunately, my father died suddenly. And that changed everything for me. I then got fed up of being on the road. I wanted to be home. It just changed everything. And I told the people who I was working with in the band, I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And they said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to become a gym instructor.
Is that a fall from grace, or is that a move forward? I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't think that was a positive move. That was a move forward. But I was really happy. I was happy when I was doing it.
Great.
And I think because my father had died, I was quite sad. But when I was doing the exercise, I was very happy.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
I noticed that.
you learn very early on that exercise has that great endorphin fix and helps you feel a little bit better about life.
I asked the gym instructor, hey, what do you need to do to be a gym instructor? And he was going through his exams and he showed me his exams. And I was going, really? I could do that probably sleeping. Right. And that was it really. Yeah. So that's it.
This was pre sort of like a national standards days, was it? I'm trying to get my head around when was the time spell, because I started before the UK had national standards, and you only had to do, I think I did a 4-day course to get into the industry. Were you in the same boat back then?
2 weekends.
Yeah, all right, there we go, 4 days.
22 years ago. Yeah.
Things have changed.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
For the better, of course. So what motivated you, Jenny? That was a fantastic story. I definitely went down some routes I wasn't expecting. But what motivated you to specialize specifically in training females, in training instructors with regards to postnatal, peri and menopausal health?
Right. Again, a really indirect route to this. I was just a general trainer. My husband is 6 years older than me. He still is a journalist, and all of his peers were starting to have babies. They then said to me, well, can you do exercise with me when I'm pregnant? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know how to. So I went and did a course. Now, when I did the course, it struck me that we were using a lot of systems and principles with normal people that when we came to work with the pregnant and the postnatal woman, it was still like sit on a Swiss ball. It was still, those 2-pound hand weights, all of this nonsense. And I honestly, and then Paul Chek was coming to the UK and he was becoming much more popular, and he of course gave us the principle of primal movement patterns, and I just thought, well, why have we got the women sitting on the Swiss ball when mom life, even though I wasn't a mom then, mom life is completely not sitting on the Swiss ball. Something's happened. Something, we have lost something in the translation. And so my then thought was to create some education that helped women actually live the lives that they actually lead, and help the trainers to prepare the moms for the lives they actually lead and will lead, whether during pregnancy or in the postnatal period. I just thought there was something weird and odd going on, whereby we had all of these principles of functionality in general exercise, and when we hit pregnancy and postnatal, it was ruled by fear. It was ruled by fear.
That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you a little bit later on, but now we're kind of on that topic now, I might ask it now, which is, for a long time, the prevalent medical advice in the past, I think it's changing, but in the past has been this idea of, oh, you're pregnant, therefore you should rest. And we see in movies, we see in people's lives where someone's pregnant, oh, stick your feet up, take it easy, you're eating for 2. We see all these concepts about eat more, do less. What's your thoughts on that today in the 21st century?
Well, you said I wasn't allowed to swear, so I won't swear, but I think it's absolute nonsense.
Oh, very good.
All right. So do you have, are you a father?
I am. I have 5 children.
Oh, yes, you told me you have a whole load of kids. Yeah. Okay. And at what point did you see Mrs. Pratt parking butt with feet up and not doing life?
Yeah, absolutely. Not very often, to be honest.
Yeah, so that's it. The reality of it is that, I mean, I don't live in London now, but when I used to live in London, you'd see pregnant women working right, going to work, big tummies. They've got the bump on board badge, and they have to stand just like everybody else. Nobody's cutting them any slack. If you want a long maternity leave, you have to work right up until the last minute. So, and life goes on. If your wife has 5 children, at some point she would have been pregnant with 4 kids.
She was.
Oh my gosh.
She was a tough cookie.
Washing still to be done, food still to be bought, food still to be cooked, little kids still to to manage. Oh, so why? And on her feet for a great part of her day and being treated just as a normal person, just with a bump. So absolutely, it's a special time. It's a time when there are lots of other considerations, but actually in reality, most women, and I would say 90% of women, have to get on with life because they have to get on with life. We just need to do reality, and we need to prepare them. We need to get them and keep them strong in pregnancy, prepare them for the job of labor, which if it's an active birth, they'll be on their feet and moving around and squatting, etc. And then in the postnatal period, I think it's the toughest time in any woman's life. You are physically under capacity and you have the world of demands on you and you are not sleeping.
Yeah. We'll talk in a minute, Jenny, about the postnatal period. I just want to, because you mentioned there that there is definitely a cultural thing going on here that, women can't, they have to continue with life and to work. And this idea of resting and stick your feet up, it is outdated from what I can tell in your opinion. But I guess another side to this is, has that medical viewpoint changed, do you think, of encouraging people to do less rather than to prepare for effectively what is going to be an incredibly physical experience, which is giving birth?
The world of functional movement, I don't think has reached the clinicians. I can see chinks of that. I teach for a program called the Mummy MOT, which is a program for women's health physios who want to specialize in postnatal rehab and pregnancy work, women working with women in physio when they're pregnant. And that involves an aspect of functional movement. Now, when I teach that course, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, many of the concepts that I'm presenting to those clinicians are kind of like, whoa, that pregnant woman will squat, lunge, push things, pull things, bend over, rotate, balance, locomote. And we need to put that into her exercise program to prepare her for the life she actually leads. For many of them, that's kind of like, oh, right.
And do you find people are accepting of that, or are they pushing back?
Not the way I teach, Ben.
Of course, wonderful.
They accept that. They accept that as a major light bulb moment. But yes, actually, I am, in all seriousness, well received and seen as, wow, that's refreshing, that's new. Oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? Absolutely.
Fantastic. Now let's just change direction slightly. That was quite a fascinating discussion. But how does the underlying physiological changes that occur during a healthy pregnancy, let's say somebody who has no complications, how does that potentially change the fitness or training experience for a woman who does want to remain active throughout pregnancy?
Well, I'm always very much, your needs have to take a back seat to the physiological needs and demands of your pregnancy. So the bump rules. The bump rules. Okay? and you are your job, you're the conduit, you're to bring the bump to life eventually, but ultimately we do nothing that could possibly endanger the baby and the baby's development. So I think ultimately how you sorry, there's a little fly there, how you train in pregnancy is very much about how you trained before you were pregnant as well. Somebody who was doing like Olympic lifting, doing a barbell curl with then 10 kg plates on each end might be completely reducing her training capacity. And that's great for her. Now, if you were sedentary and you don't even know what a barbell is, and then you think, okay, I'm going to do some weights now I'm pregnant, and you go for that weight, then that's inappropriate. So I actually know that every woman's journey in terms of physical fitness is bespoke, and it's very much about her foundation, her backstory, her physiological and exercise backstory, and we then create a program that's bespoke to her. her before pregnancy and actually how she's experienced in pregnancy now. And obviously that then changes throughout the trimesters as well.
So the program of exercise for any female client is really based upon the context of where they have been at physically for the last 6-12 months in terms of their own training and what they're used to doing.
Absolutely. Because in that first trimester, for many people, I mean, some people don't even know they're pregnant until maybe 7, 8, 9 weeks. For that first trimester, the training kind of can look like reasonably what it looked like before pregnancy. But then as we move into trimester 2, sort of when somebody is about 25 weeks, physiologically now they've changed. Center of gravity has changed. Their proprioceptive awareness regarding their feet and just where for many people where the head is in space, that's changed. So I feel when people talk about pregnancy training, I always think it's the easiest training in the world because the bump and the growth of the baby naturally will slow the woman down. If you have a great dialogue with her and keep that conversation open, you'll see she says, do you know what, that felt great in trimester 1. This doesn't feel so good now. And then it's an opportunity to amend the program. What was great in trimester 2 might not be great in trimester 3. So for me, never stop talking to the client, always be led by the client, never endanger the pregnancy, and the bump is always first.
Okay, it sounds like a good common sense there in keeping safety first to ensure that we don't endanger anything about the actual process of pregnancy. But at the same time, I still get that sense that you're encouraging people to find what they can do.
Yes.
Let's explore, let's try things rather than limit what you should be doing.
Yes, because we as the trainer should always have that wonderful open conversation. How's that feel for you? And that conversation keeps going all the way till the end of the pregnancy. How's that feel for you? Because absolutely what's great in trimester 1, it will probably not be brilliant in 3.
Okay, that leads us to a nice, interesting thought process, which is, in your experience, do you ever find that pregnant clients sometimes set themselves in the early stages unrealistic objectives for what they might achieve later on?
Yes.
And what might be the most common thing that you see in terms of unrealistic goals?
Okay. I don't want to put on any weight. You will. I don't want to put on any weight. I want to keep my fitness up. But the benchmark for their fitness is when they were not pregnant.
Of course.
Yeah. So what they don't kind of get, and I deal with this, I manage this expectation. Your job is maintenance here.
Right.
Maintenance. We're not going for great improvements in strength and speed and stamina. Maintenance. And also, there's lots of other things that we need to be talking about because sure as sure, your tummy will stretch. Sure as sure, you will lose some of your conditioning. But now we need to think about, it's almost like having a great labor, having a strong labor, and having a strong early postnatal period. So it's all, and things like the pelvic floor and the rest of the core, having a strong focus there and setting up those habits and information there so that we're not dealing with that when she's tired and exhausted in the postnatal period. So I really think about, I change the emphasis from the aesthetics to actually, we've got some big girls work to do here.
Yeah, sure. I like that. I like that.
Never mind the size of bottoms. Bottom will change, but we actually can amend that later. Wherever you've gone to, you can come back from. Don't worry about that. But we've got some bigger fish to fry. That's my conversation.
I particularly like that emphasis on this is less about aesthetics, even though so often in the gym, that's where people are at before maybe pregnancy. But this is now about trying to prepare you for the birth. And particularly, I like what you said about we can do things now that will make your postnatal period so much easier.
Yeah,
so, yeah, that's a great thought process. It also leads me to the next question that I have, which are there any specific beneficial habits, exercises, things that you encourage people to do when they are pregnant to try and help them in the future, but maybe you find that it's a little tricky to get people to adhere to?
Definitely the big thing is the pelvic floor.
Oh, really? So even though people must know that that's good, they still find that they maybe don't stick to it and do it regularly?
Yeah. And the thing is, Ben, it's only when that then becomes a problem that people kind of get that.
Right.
You can, when it's not a problem to you, it goes in one ear and out the other. La, 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 la. I don't want to think about that. But then literally when it becomes an issue, because, to birth, we have to stretch and sometimes, unfortunately, tear or sometimes be cut. There is a difference in continence and awareness in the pelvic bowl post-birth. And it's only when people experience that that they get it.
Right. I guess I can understand it to some degree. The amount of people who maybe don't remain active, I'm talking the general public, not just pregnant women here, who don't remain active, but then in their mid to late 40s suddenly realize, man, I need to do some exercise here. Look at the state of me. And I wonder if it's the same sort of mentality. When it's not really a problem for them, they don't feel motivated to do it. But once it becomes a problem, suddenly there's this drive to, I need to correct this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what goes on. It's just not your problem until it's your problem.
Yeah. And do you know, are there any statistics for how many women would typically experience something like stress incontinence post-pregnancy?
Oh my gosh. Well, the official stat is, and this is sort of American and UK, 1 in 3.
1 in 3. How's that?
That's conservative. I would say 90%.
Oh, really? Wow.
I have yet to have somebody come complete their screening and say, and especially early postnatal, and say, nope, everything feels and functions just as it did before birth. And you're giggling because you are the father of 5, and so I think
that's my wife.
Yeah, you've got some knowledge there about that. Absolutely, because physiologically there must be a change.
Yeah,
there must be. So I think, the stats I think of 1 in 3 is pretty conservative, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So it's something that people who maybe haven't had a child before and are now pregnant should expect. But so what could they do? A simple practical tip that would help them postnatally not experience something like that nearly to the same level.
Prehab for their pelvic floor and their core while they're pregnant. So in terms of strength work, but also which is often overlooked, the let go. Mm-hmm. So when we think pelvic floor exercise, you often think we think hypertrophy, don't we? We want to make strength. Mm-hmm. But also our pelvic floor is also about the let go, because that's how we urinate. That's how we defecate. Right. That's how we get babies out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for somebody to help you with that, then their emphasis has to not only be on let's make you stronger and functional, but functionality also is also the reverse of getting stronger, and not necessarily getting weaker, just the allowingness of pelvic function.
Because something that you typically find talked about a lot with pelvic function and pelvic floor is that you get so much focus on things like Kegel exercises, the squeezing and the lifting of the pelvic floor muscles. But as you well know, Jenny, the core as a whole, the obliques, the abdominals, the low back muscles, all of those muscles and the diaphragm included in breathing all affect pelvic function because of the pressure they create on the pelvic floor muscles below. So do you tend to have a broader approach to that than just something like, let's do some Kegels?
Hello? Yes! Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Okay. So if I do the shortest version of this as possible, the Kegel is evidence-based. It works. Mm-hmm. All right. How do people perform them? So actually some people might not know what it is. So if I instructed you in a Kegel, it would be, imagine for the anterior aspect of the pelvic floor supporting the bladder, imagine you want to stop the flow of urine, find those muscles, tension, and then lift. Mm-hmm. And then posterior pelvic floor, imagine you didn't want to pass gas, find those muscles, tension, and lift. Boom. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, even if you're not a pre-postnatal specialist, if I asked you this question, how many people pee themselves when they're stood still? You would probably say not many. When your clients say, I don't want to do skipping, jumping, box jumps, it's all about motion and impact, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Kegel is great for especially finding your pelvic floor. You're very glad to do even one Kegel once you've just given birth. You're like, yes, I am back in the room. Okay, great. But there's a continuum. There's a continuum. So we have the Kegel, which is literally the finding, and it's a very small contraction. Mm-hmm. But then we know fascially, if we think about something like the line, Thomas Miser's line, deep front line, myofascial line, then we then see that the pelvic floor doesn't sit in isolation, that it is now part of the global system. So what we need to do is bring that Kegel along the continuum. So the next thing we add is some visualizations, because we know that helps people to connect better to a muscle. So we add a visualization of the front of the pelvic floor attached to the pubis, the back is attached to the coccyx. So now think about bringing the pubis and the coccyx towards each other, and at the midpoint, the perineum, then we get a lift. Mm-hmm. So we've got Kegel, then add a visualization. Now, we know that the core, the bottom of it is the pelvic floor, the top of it is the diaphragm. Do we think that both of those have anything to do with each other? Yes, they do. There we go.
Yeah.
They're synergists. Okay, so now we add an exhale to that pubis and coccyx coming together, exhale at the same time, exhale and lift the pelvic floor. And now we're starting to integrate. We then move along the continuum. There's only 2 more bits. Then we add fascial tension. When we create tension throughout the fascial system, we now increase the capacity for that information to travel globally. So even if you just had the resistance band, pull the resistance band, you can feel anterior arm lines activating, tummy down into pelvic floor. So now exhale, pubis and coccyx coming together, pull the band, increase fascial tension. Instantly people start, yes, I can feel my pelvic floor. And the last step is to add functional movement to that. So you're in a squat position with that band, come out of the squat, move the body against gravity, increase fascial tension, exhale, coccyx and pubis coming together, lift the pelvic floor. Boom. Mm-hmm. Now, and then and then we're going to start adding locomotion and then balancing. So what we've got is something static like a Kegel. Mm-hmm. And if that worked, if that was all we had to do, who's buying those Tenor ladies? Why is Tenor advertising so furiously on telly? Why? Because the pelvic floor exercises that people are traditionally taught isn't the end of the conversation. It's actually the beginning of the conversation. And what we need to do is have a re-coordination with the rest of the core, as you said, and then start integrating functional movement, training the pelvic floor for the movements of life. And I come right back now to the pull check thing. So we integrate the pelvic floor exercise with the squat, the lunge, the push, the pull, bend to extend, the rotate, the balance, the locomotion.
Into your primary movement patterns. Yeah, fantastic. And I can see that that's a really logical process where you're not just saying this muscle group in isolation needs to have strength to resist the downward pressure from the bladder. But actually what we're trying to do is say you need to be able to do this in all different types of motion so you can walk, jump, bend, and live in life without the worry that you can't hang on as you need to.
Absolutely. That's it. So we want our pelvic floor to work well when we're moving, when we've got locomotion, when life is dynamic, because life is dynamic. I'm sure, again, your wife, after having all those kids, again, she's not stood still. Nope. You've got to move. So we want our pelvic floor to work when we want to be dynamic, but then we were training it traditionally with a Kegel where we're static. Sit still, do your pelvic floor exercises.
Excellent. We're kind of coming up on time. I just want to ask just 2 quick final questions if we can, Jenny. You've been doing so well. Nearly there. What advice would you offer to fitness professionals in particular here to help to better support a pregnant mother who is struggling to find that space between family life and work in order to actually do some exercise and activity?
Well, I would definitely say that availability. So if you're working with pregnant people, and especially the modern pregnant woman who will probably work right up until the end of her pregnancy, then there's no point in you sort of saying, well, I don't work weekends. So she'll probably have to come to you on a Saturday or Sunday. And then we have to make ourselves available for the space that they've got to do exercise. And definitely now, Ben, with the technology that we've got, you're seeing somebody face to face, say once, possibly twice a week, but say once a week, then you've got to create some kind of online and virtual help, extra supportive content for her away from the sessions, and then also have to hold her in the process of the accountability and progressing. So I think we have to change our model. If you're working with definitely pregnant women, it's our availability, because it's definitely got to be, you've got to do work with her in the evenings or the weekends, and then also you've got to support her with additional content that she can access without you being present. That's the modern way to train people, isn't it, anyway?
Indeed. And I totally echo what you said there. There's so much now that you can do, so many applications that are available now to be able to create accountability, to track your clients, to have them record things even when you're not in person with that individual. And it certainly would be beneficial for any client, but even more so with those who are trying to get into the habit of physical activity a bit more when they're pregnant. So last question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think technology really does help us to extend our role and actually to do our job better, because people can still have access to us and not have to pay, like the full amount of, a full session price.
Yeah, of course. I totally agree. So Jenny, if you could go back in time, right, and you could offer one single piece of advice to Jenny Burrell, who has just qualified with her first pre and postnatal qualification, knowing what you've learned over the years, your experience in teaching in this field, and you've now got one thing to teach yourself, what would you say?
Don't be afraid.
Why would you say that?
Yeah, don't practice from a position of fear, because everything that I learned in the beginning was everything about what not to do.
Right.
Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And so I started off my career being very afraid. And I definitely remember the first course that I ever taught, in the feedback, somebody wrote, I think some of the things she's doing are dangerous. And well, you can use a TRX with a pregnant woman. And they were like going, I don't think so, because they had been so used to sitting on the Swiss balls. So I would definitely say, don't be afraid. Look, I don't think, there are hardly any bad tools to be using with this client population. It is how you use them. So I can use a Viper, I can use a kettlebell, I can use a rip trainer. Now, how am I going to adapt that to that client?
Yeah, great. I can remember when I first did a pre and postnatal course, and that was kind of my thought as well. There was so much around limiting what you can do because there's risk. Yes. And I can even remember, exercise referral and that whole concept of working with medical community. And it's all about do less. This is the risk. So don't do these things. And at the end of both of those courses, I was left thinking, so what can I do with them? I would much rather be taught that. What yes. I can do to help these people rather than tell me what is the issues. I'm not saying the safety element isn't important, but surely it's empowering, as you're doing, Jenny, to get out there and to teach people the things that can really help people rather than just worry about what might go wrong.
Yes. It's like one of the things that I do at the beginning of the class, I pick up a kettlebell. This is a kettlebell. You can kill somebody with this. You can kill somebody with this, whether they are pregnant or not. Now let's talk about how you will use this kettlebell with the pregnant woman. Yeah. There we go.
Great stuff. I think that's a great comment to end on. All right. Have belief that there is great things that you can still do, whether you're pregnant or you're postnatal. That's fantastic. Hey, Jenny, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you and to explore a few of your thoughts and ideas. Is there anything finally you would like to mention or say to the listeners?
Yeah, women need us. Great help is hard to find, and they run in packs, those girls. So you do great work with one of them, they will tell your friends. In the 20 odd years I've worked in this field, I've placed one advert in terms of looking for clients. One advert.
Wow, really?
One advert, because
so there's clearly demand.
Yes. Yes, there is. Yes.
Great. Jenny, it's been such a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate your great wisdom, advice, and the wonderful way that you deliver it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share via social media. You can also rate the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. If you'd like to know more about us, then check out our range of online courses at www.nordicfitnesseducation.com.